So we're sitting here at the Spring Performance Variety Trials at the Elora Research Station, University of Guelph. They're conducted by Dr. Ali Navabi and managed by Nicholas Welker, his technician. Now normally when we think about performance trials, it's about comparing yields, it's about comparing standability, maybe disease tolerance. Rarely do we think about differences in herbicide injury, but this year at this site we had the opportunity to look at that. To control weeds, a grass and broadleaf herbicide was applied to every single plot here, and what the researchers noticed once the barley was going out into head is that there was pretty significant differences in the level of crop injury amongst different varieties. Now, maybe as a breeder, you're not so keen about those results. From a weed scientist, from a farmer's perspective, I want to know that information, because if I'm growing a spring barley variety, I'm going to be trying to control weeds, I'm going to be using herbicides. I want to know if that variety is going to be more sensitive to the herbicide or not. So let's take a step back for a second. What causes herbicide injury in cereals? And it's usually three components. One is environmental stress. If it's cool, cloudy, wet, that spring cereal, in this case barley, has a tougher time metabolizing the herbicide, more prone to injury. That's number one. Number two is the staging. If we make herbicide applications closer to flag leaf and heading, that puts more stress on the plant during the reproductive phase. That's no good either. And then lastly, there's varietal sensitivity. And rarely do we have an opportunity to actually see differences between varieties and at least document them. And we have that situation here. So let's look at one, what type of injury we're seeing, and then two, the difference between a susceptible and more tolerant variety. So if we look here at this plot, we have a spring barley variety, that's really showing this leaf distortion on the head. The awns are incredibly distorted, and it's causing the actual head to curl up. And so we would assume that that will have some negative impact on yield, because the cereal head hasn't been able to form properly. Now, in this case, about 30% of the plants have this distorted head. Let's contrast that to the plot behind. Different variety, and you can see here awns are normal. They have that normal straight up appearance. There's no distortion whatsoever in this particular variety. So the only difference here, same herbicide, same application date, same environmental conditions, just a difference in varietal susceptibility. So what do we learn from a trial like this? Well, when it comes to herbicide injury, there's certainly ways we can avoid it and minimize it. But if we look at the impact here of differences in variety, I don't think it's too hard to imagine a circumstance where maybe we've lost 10, 15, even 20% yield loss from these distorted heads. Time will tell. So if we want to minimize the risk of that type of injury, that type of economic loss, there's three things we can focus on. Number one, we can avoid applying herbicides under extreme environmental conditions. And by that I mean avoid temperatures that are really cold, so below 5 degrees Celsius, or when air temperatures are really hot, above 25 degrees Celsius, or even the fluctuation of cold to hot and vice versa. The second thing we can do is avoid making applications close to the reproductive phase of a cereal crop like barley. So specifically, once the flag leaves out, we want to be out of that game. We want to be applying well before the flag leaf to minimize herbicide injury. And then lastly, we want to take advantage of varietal differences. So in a trial like this, we see varietal differences. It's important to see and know those varietal differences. You can look at the performance trials, you can talk to your seed supplier and your trusted local agronomist.